Hey Packer fans, before jumping into today's podcast, I had to do a quick addendum because, of course, as soon as I record the podcast, the Packers come out with some late breaking news on Friday. So wanted to make sure I address this. The Packers made one transaction by releasing tight end Elliott, which will open up a roster spot. But more importantly, they placed 9 players on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. A couple quick notes before I say the names and go over it. The first thing to remember is that by placing a player on the PUP list now does not mean that they have to miss any regular season time. So if they are placed on PUP now, they can still be brought back at any point prior to the start of the season. If they are on the PUP list now and go into the season, that's when they will miss the first 6 weeks of the regular season. However, you also need to remember that in order for them to start the season on the PUP list, if you do want them, in fact, to miss those first 6 games, they would have to be placed on the PUP list now. You can't just do it anytime that you want if they sustain an injury later. It's only for players that already start on the PUP list. So these are players that could theoretically be placed on the PUP list to start the season and miss the first 6 weeks of the season. They also could at any time be brought back tomorrow and before the start of the regular season and before the final roster cutdowns. And if so, then they don't have to miss any time whatsoever. But the other big piece of news before I get into the 9 players that were placed on PUP is that David Bakhtiari, as of this time, was not placed on the physically unable to perform list, which could mean that he is ready to go for the start of training camp. I don't want to glean or read too much into this that we don't know for sure. There's been no report that he will be ready for day 1 of training camp, but they placed a variety of rookies and veterans on this list to start the season. You would have thought that if Bakhtiari was going to start on PUP, they just would have released that now. So the fact that he is not on the PUP list could be, and I want to stress could be, a very good sign for the Packers left tackle for the start of training camp, but we will have to wait and see. But the 9 players that were placed on PUP, the biggest surprise was Christian Watson, the wide receiver. He went through rookie minicamps, OTAs, minicamps, etc., with seemingly no issue. So definitely a surprise that he was starting the year on the PUP list. Hopefully it is nothing major. I've seen no other reports at this time as to what he is dealing with. Robert Tunyan, not a surprise, coming off a torn ACL. There was some talk that maybe he would be ready for day 1 of training camp. I always stress caution with that because you just don't know with torn ACLs, and these things always have a way of lasting longer than you would hope or expect. But Robert Tunyan will start on the PUP list. Elton Jenkins as well, as expected, coming off of the torn ACL. The next couple, Mason Crosby and Dean Lowry, not a huge surprise because both of them at mini camps were practicing off to the side. So clearly their injuries have not subsided and they will start on the PUP list as well. Kylan Hill, running back coming off a torn ACL, not a surprise there. Hautai Potatu was also in the injury protocols during all of mini camps, so that should not come as a surprise. Same goes for Randy Ramsey. And then the only other slight surprise is Patrick Taylor, who had no issues at mini camp and was practicing with the team, so that is a bit of a surprise as well. With Patrick Taylor and Kylan Hill both placed on the PUP list, that could give Tyler Goodson and BJ Baylor a lot of opportunities, so we should get an extended look at those 2 running backs. And then again, as mentioned, Eli Wolf was released, which should open up a roster spot as well, which could be used sooner rather than later, maybe at running back with both Taylor and Hill out. We will have to wait and see how Brian Gutekunst and company addresses that free agent spot. But wanted to address all of that before jumping into today's pre-recorded episode because it was pretty major news. We will keep you posted here with any other updates as time goes on. But until that time, enjoy the rest of today's pre-recorded episode. Enjoy. What's going on, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at AndyHermanNFL. Have a fun show lined up for you today. We're going to be taking a look at some of the elite players that the Packers will be taking on in 2022. One of my favorite things to do every year is just kind of look at some of the top tier talent that Green Bay is going to get to challenge either in Green Bay or on the road, and just sort of seeing some of the, all pro level talent that, we're going to get to see in some capacity, because as much as we are Packer fans and love watching the Packers win, it is also fun seeing some of these just best of the best athletes in the prime of their careers and seeing how Green Bay matches up against them. So we'll go through that in just a second. Before we get there, Green Bay did have some news and notes from Friday. So the first thing is that they had a lot of promotions in their front office and overall on their staff. So these may not mean like a ton. Like John Eric Sullivan's probably a name that you may have heard of or at least should know. But a lot of these maybe not so much. But this is a lot of the backbone of the Packers front office and overall overall personnel grouping. So John Eric Sullivan was promoted to VP of Player Personnel, a very prestigious position. Chris Gaines was added as, or named or promoted to a college scout. Sean Linton was promoted to a college scout as well. Dawson Freeland is now the senior football data analyst. Brian Flea Engel has been promoted to director of sports medicine and the head athletic trainer. And Nate Weir is now the associate athletic trainer and director of rehab and return to play. So you talk about player injuries and how quickly they can come back. You know, Brian Engel, Nate Weir, those are the two guys that you're going to be looking at. And then again, you know, we don't talk about the scouts because it's tough to know like who scouted who and what they said and what their scouting report was, right? But like the scouting department is the backbone of an organization, and you know all the players that are currently on the roster were scouted, whether it be by pro scouts, college scouts, both. That goes so much into building a franchise. And then of course your vice president of player personnel, a huge role, and that is now John Eric Sullivan's position. So lots of movement within the staff and front office of the Packers. So exciting news there. Also, a lot of people have been wondering about the alternate jerseys. I know a lot of people really liked them a season ago. Green Bay will be continuing on with the same alternate jersey that they did a season ago. And Mark Murphy also noted that it is a 5-year deal for those jerseys. So those alternate jerseys will be worn through 2025. So if you really liked them and were wondering if maybe it would be worth getting a jersey or not, because would it just be like a year or two thing, they will be in production and used up until 2025 and through 2025. So cool news there, because I think those jerseys were really awesome, and it's always fun seeing Green Bay with just a little bit different, alternate jersey. Everyone loves the two normal ones, the white and the green and gold. They're just picture perfect, and you don't really want to mess with it too much, but one game of an alternate jersey is always great, and I think they've done a really nice job with this iteration of the jersey. So that brings us to our main topic for today. And I'm going to just be going through position by position. These are my rankings of the top 5 players at every position that the Packers are going to face this year. So let's kick things off with quarterback right away. A really fun group of quarterbacks led with the top 2 of Tom Brady and Josh Allen. Those Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers versus Josh Allen matchups will be, screaming through the media over and over in the highlight reels and the matchup reels leading into those weeks. It's always a little bit silly, as Aaron Rodgers mentions, because neither Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers will be on the field at the same time ever, but still will be circulated over and over and over through the course of those weeks. But being able to see Tom Brady and Josh Allen should be super exciting. We'll get to see Packers versus Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, and Kirk Cousins. I think those are going to be the top 5 quarterbacks that the Packers face. So the first two, obviously, Brady and Allen, will be very challenging. Stafford and Prescott, not going to be easy. But if Kirk Cousins is the 5th best quarterback that Green Bay plays this year in a 17-game season, that's not exactly the worst case scenario in the world. So there could be players that step up, maybe, who knows, like maybe a variety of different quarterbacks, have a much better season than we're projecting, and it ends up being much tougher. But I think overall, if again, Cousins is the 5th best, that's not the worst case scenario in the world. Top 5 running backs Green Bay will face, the same thing here, very top heavy with the first 2, Derrick Henry, of course, and then Dalvin Cook. But then the next 3, like Zeke Elliott and Saquon Barkley, both good running backs, right? But like Zeke Elliott's wearing down. Like you could even put Tony Pollard on here instead of Elliott, and I would not be too upset by it. Saquon Barkley has all the talent in the world, but hasn't ever quite lived up to those expectations. And then Antonio Gibson, who is also a really fun and exciting running back, but they're probably going to go with a little bit more of a rotation, just with how they've attacked that position in the offseason. So again, good running backs on the top, Henry and Cook, but if you're worried about the Packers run defense, you got to be thrilled that, Zeke Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Antonio Gibson are probably the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th best running backs that Green Bay is going to face this year. That's not super daunting. Miles Sanders could be another player that you put on this list, but it's not a brutal schedule when it comes to running backs. That cannot be said about the wide receiver position. Wide receivers like Mike Evans and Terry McLaurin didn't even make this list, which should scare you enough. But you play Cooper Kupp again and the Rams. You play Justin Jefferson twice with the Vikings, Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins, Stephon Diggs with the Bills, and A.J. Brown with the Eagles. You could argue, Mike Evans or Terry McLaurin over A.J. Brown, and I'm not going to fight you too much on it. I think any of those 3 could be in that final spot. But man, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Brown, just be thankful they don't have to face the Raiders and Devontae Adams this season, which still feels weird. But other than Adams, they are facing basically the best of the best when it comes to receivers this season. Tight end, This will make a lot of people happy because, tight end has just been a position that seemingly forever has just killed the Packers, but no Kelsey, no Kittle, no Darren Waller, like all the best tight ends will not be visiting the Packers this season in any capacity. You do have Dallas Goddard in the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a really nice season a year ago. You do have an ascending TJ Hawkinson in the Detroit Lions, playing him twice this season. Dalton Schultz, who is still on the franchise tag, and they're still figuring that out for the Cowboys. You've got Hunter Henry for the Patriots, and then Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins. But overall, not exactly a death row of tight ends that the Packers will be facing this year. So another really good sign there. However, offensive tackles, they are facing some of the best in the league. Tristan Wirfs, Tyron Smith for the Cowboys, Lane Johnson for the Eagles, Jordan Mailata for the Eagles, and then Teron Armstead with the Dolphins. You could make a couple changes and swaps at the end of like how you stack those last couple. There's some other good tackles that they'll face this season. But for me, Wirfs, Tyron Smith, Lane Johnson, Teron Armstead, and Mailata for the Eagles are the top 5 that I think they're going to face this upcoming season. And then interior offensive lineman, Zach Martin for the Cowboys comes in at number 1. Ryan Jensen for the Bucs at center at number 2. Kelsey for the Eagles at number 3. Shaq Mason for the Bucs at number 4. And then this is another one, maybe slightly controversial. He was injured a lot of last season, but still, if Frank Ragnow is healthy for the Lions, I still think he's more than deserving to be on this list, and they'll have to face him twice this season. So I'm going to go with Frank Ragnow as number 5. So overall on offense, Brady, Allen, Stafford, Prescott, and Cousins at quarterback, Henry, Cook, Elliott, Barkley, and Gibson at running back, Kupp, Jefferson, Hill, Diggs, and Brown at receiver, Goddard, Hawkinson, Schultz, Henry, and Gesicki at tight end, Wirfs, Smith, Johnson, Armstead, and Mailata at tackle, and Zach Martin, Jensen, Kelsey, Mason, and Ragnow at interior offensive line. Which brings us to the defensive side of the football, and the defensive lineman will not be an easy task, starting with arguably the greatest player in football today in Aaron Donald. Justin Simmons for the Titans is an absolute beast. Vita Vea, you could say the exact same thing for the Buccaneers. Jonathan Allen for the Commanders, which is still weird to say. What did I say for Gibson earlier? Did I say football team? I don't even remember. But Commanders for Jonathan Allen, and then Leonard Williams for the Giants as well. Edge rusher, this is another one where they face some really good players. And again, like Danielle Hunter came in as like an honorable mention here. So there's some good ones, but like the top edge rushers, Green Bay is going to be avoiding the vast majority of them. They do still face Von Miller for the Buffalo Bills, DeMarcus Lawrence for the Cowboys, Shaq Barrett for the Bucs, Chase Young for the Commanders, and Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions, the number 2 overall pick this year. So they definitely have some really talented edge rushers that they're facing. Montez Sweat's another player that could have been on that list. So overall, very, very talented group, but they avoid a lot of the top tier edge rushers like your Myles Garrett, your TJ Watts, etc. Inside linebacker, number 1 on the list might be the best edge rusher that they also face this season, which is just crazy to think of. That's Micah Parsons for the Cowboys. He is just an absolute beast. Edge rusher, linebacker. It doesn't matter where you play him. He will have a massive impact in that game. The next ones you could label in a variety of different ways. Eric Kendricks for the Vikings is not on this list. He could be another, like you could put him as high as number 2 and I wouldn't have a major issue with it. But I'm going Bobby Wagner, and then I'm going Levante David, Roquan Smith, and Devin White for the Bucs as well. So pretty good group. Pro Football Focus hated Roquan Smith and Devin White last year. So those two were, a little bit lower on the list. But either way, those 5, Parsons, Wagner, David, Roquan, and Devin White will go a long way in deciding those games. Green Bay has struggled in the past against teams with really fast and really athletic inside linebackers. So that is a who's who of fast athletic linebackers in that top 5. Corners, they're going to face arguably the best corner in football in Jalen Ramsey. Xavier Howard for the Dolphins is right up there as well. Tre'Davious White for the Bills, Darius Slay for the Eagles, and then Carlton Davis with the Bucs rounds out my top 5. I think Jalen Johnson for the Bears could get in that conversation this season as well. They have some good corners that they're going against, but that's who I'm putting in my top 5. And then they have a lot of really good safeties that they're facing, but led by Kevin Byard for the Titans, Antoine Winfield Jr. for the Bucs, Harrison Smith for the Vikings, Javon Holland for the Dolphins, and Micah Hyde, of course, for the Buffalo Bills. Top 5 rookies that they'll face this season, they face like a ton of first-round picks, like just some really, really good names. But these are the 5 that I'm most looking forward to the Packers facing. Kayvon Thibodeau for the Giants, Garrett Wilson for the Jets, Jameson Williams for the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions, and then Treylon Burks for the Titans. Just with so many, Packer fans who had wanted Treylon Burks for the Packers this past season, now he'll face the Packers as a member of the Titans. That should be a fun matchup. And then the top 5 coaches that the Packers will face this season: Bill Belichick with the Patriots, Sean McDermott with the Bills, Mike Vrabel with the Titans, Sean McVay with the Rams. These aren't in order. And then the return of Mike McCarthy for the Dallas Cowboys to Lambeau Field should be a lot of fun as well. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow with another fun episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.